Welcome to Wordle with Gaga. Welcome Gaga and Grumps to Wordle with Gaga.
Now tap that screen. Tap it, tap it, tap that screen. Yeah, tap
Welcome
it, tap
Lando
it,
the Goat Norris to Wordle with Gaga.
let's go. Now tap that screen. Tap it, tap it, tap that screen. Yeah, tap it, tap it. Let's see those team stickers flow.
Good game.
Oh, oh, gang gremlins on the scene. Oh, oh. Now tap that screen. Oh,
Welcome D tilde, V tilde, P to Wordle with Gaga.
now tap that screen. Now tap that screen.
Welcome Chicken D to Wordle with Gaga.
Gang gremlins on the scene. Welcome gremlins to
Welcome
the
Lando
game
the Goat Norris to Wordle with
grotto.
Gaga.
Gremlins to the game grotto. Welcoming guys, settle down, grab your heartbeat.
Gaga
Share a
Grumps says
round.
welcome
Now
gremlins
tap
to the
that
game
screen,
grotto.
tap it, tap it,
Take a
tap
seat,
that screen,
grab
yeah,
your
tap
daily
it, tap
heart,
it.
claim your
It's
points and prepare to play.
routine. Gang gremlins
Welcome
on the
Gaga and
scene.
Grumps to Wordle with Gaga.
Gang gremlins on the scene. Gang gremlins on the scene.
We would be honored if you would join us.
Now tap that screen. Tap it, tap it, tap that
Welcome
screen.
Noah Riley to Wordle with Gaga.
Gaga Grumps says the in-house thanks for doing the
Now
daily
tap
heart.
that screen. Tap it, tap it, tap that screen. Yeah, tap it, tap it. Let's see those team stickers flow. Gang
We would be
gremlins on the
honored.
scene.
Grumps says welcome one and all.
Now tap that screen.
Welcome D tilde, V tilde, P to Wordle with Gaga.
Now tap that
Gaga
screen.
Grumps says treasure box up if you need a coin for your daily heart.
Now tap that screen. Gang gremlins on the scene.
Welcome Grumps to Wordle with Gaga.
Grumps says who is ready to play Wordle.
Thanks for the follow.
Grumps says at Noah Bell no.
We would be honored if you would join us.
Gaga Grumps says what letter will the wheel choose? Predictions in the chat now.
Level up.
Gaga Grumps says it's my life's ambition money.
Welcome my all to Wordle with Gaga.
Gaga Grumps says my alt in the house with the level up. So a quick sequel for this.
It's a LLL level up. I guessed it wrong, you guessed it right. Now here we are, another height. If support was letters, you'd spell wow. This level's ours, come out with me now. Green, green, look at that glow. Didn't solve Wordle solo though. Support came in, guess it snapped. Level unlocked, shout out.
Grumps says at Alwyn say what?
New fandom level streak still alive. Wordle solved and you helped me fry. Tomorrow we guess same time, same chat, same brilliant brains. Remember that.
Gaga Grumps says, what letter will the wheel choose? Predictions in the chat now.
Grumps says a juicy Q. Welcome Frostblocks to Wordle with Gaga.
Gaga Grumps says we are starting with A. P. Gaga Grumps says leaderboard reset incoming. Tap those screens. The one wearing the crown at the end of the song chooses the first word.
Like a thong, race to the top, like a thon. Tap and don't stop, like a thon. Who will be crowned? Thanks for the follow.
Welcome Luke to Wordle with Gaga.
We would be honored if you
Gaga
would join
Grumps says want to steal the starting word. Send the ranking crown and snipe the list. Gaga Grumps says I've given you the beat, now let's see your fingers dance. Gaga Grumps says your word starting with P, please my alt. Gaga Grumps says thanks for doing your daily heart, Luke.
Welcome Jensen runs until to Wordle with Gaga. My alt says Poppy.
Thanks for the follow. Thanks for the follow.
Gaga Grumps says and sending the treasure box. Gaga Grumps says Poppy you got.
Welcome Ocean Triangle to Wordle with Gaga. Welcome Laurie Hart Hands to Wordle with
My
Gaga.
alt says boots. Gaga Grumps says a green O moved into 2 Wordle Street.
We would be honored
My alt
if you would
says
join
blue.
us.
DVP says leather.
Gaga Grumps says no Y for money.
Mum says gourd.
Precious says hi all hard hands. Gaga Grumps says Precious in the house with the right name, thanks for doing your daily heart.
Grumps says it Precious_higher.
Precious says at Grumps, hi.
Welcome MMKH to Wordle with Gaga.
Gaga
Thanks for
Grumps
the
says good
follow.
fits. No plurals in Wordle.
Thanks for the follow.
Grumps says treasure box open.
Says horse.
PH7 says roost.
Gaga Grumps says we added a yellow R in need of a home.
DVP says lover.
Gaga Grumps says lover to check for that
Welcome
darn
Max
bear
HD
trap.
to Wordle with Gaga.
We would be honored if you would join us.
Welcome Zane Landlotus to Wordle with Gaga.
Level up.
Grumps says it Precious_.
PH7 says talked.
We would be honored if you would
Gaga
join
Grumps
us.
says we added a homeless E but no trap. PH7 says talked.
Trina says force and hello.
Benjamin is in the house.
Still works.
Gaga Grumps says level up for Precious coming after the game.
Grumps says it Frostblocks laters.
Precious says it stop spamming.
Grumps says it Freya Whiteheart stop spamming.
Gaga Grumps says PH7 in the house, thanks for doing your daily heart.
Grumps says it Trina Heyer.
MMKH says not root.
Gaga Grumps says root is a good shout.
Mum says PL's horse.
Trina says at Grumps, how are we today?
PH7 says rouse mouse house.
PH7 says NVM.
Gaga Grumps says no you for root indie.
Mum says horse A.
Precious says no you.
Gaga Grumps says horseworks.
Welcome Georgie to Wordle with Gaga. Grumps says now it'll definitely not read your spam.
Trina says force.
Mum says force.
Mum says forte.
Welcome Oscar to Wordle with Gaga. Grumps says it Trina Ruthless. You?
MMKH says forte or force.
MMKH says prob
We would be
force.
honored if you would join us.
Gaga Grumps says danger zone. Options needed. Oscar says born. Gaga Grumps says Trina in the house, thanks for doing your daily heart.
Precious says force taught forte born.
Trina says that Grumps having a break from the gardening, getting too hot out there. Back out in a min though.
PH7 says force tort born forte.
Grump says it precious underscore wait, another name change. Trying to confuse us?
Trina says befit filler.
MMKH says cleft filler.
Grump says at Trina O, I have a garden in need of attention, if you're bored.
Precious says it Grumps and staying with this one eye, everyone gets confused.
Gaga Grumps says no, we need to filter Georgie. We don't like to lose in this live.
Says befit or cleft is good. TH7 says froth.
Grump says clefts are famously not filled.
PH7 says eliminate double T.
Grump says it precious underscore T's.
PH7 says either first or fourth. Gaga Grumps says if it works.
Good game.
Trina says at Grumps, I love gardening. He'll do it free of charge, dye, decorating, cooking him out.
Good game. Good game. Good game.
Oscar says born.
Good game. Good game.
Mum says why cleft not good though.
Good game. Good game.
Oscar says I said that as soon as I joined law.
Good game. Good game. Good game.
Gaga Grumps says born is in the grid.
PH7 says born nice.
Grump says at Trina I do make grand plans, then falter. Welcome King T to Wordle with Gaga.
Gaga Grumps says GG Gremlins. Let's see those W's in the chat. Gaga Grumps says Oscar in the house. Gaga Grumps says thanks for doing your daily heart OSCR.
MMKH says at Ocean Triangle it was the same.
Mum says WTH is that word.
Gaga Grumps says thanks for the GG's Trina. Gaga Grumps says okay, we need to do this for Precious leveling up to 11 in the team.
Guessed it right. Now here we are, another height. If support was letters, you'd spell wow. This level's ours. Come out with me now. Green, green, look at that glow.
Level up.
It's all Wordle solo though. Support came in. Yes, it's snapped. Level unlocked. Shout out, chat. New fandom level streak still alive. Wordle solved and you help me thrive. Tomorrow we guess same time, same chat, same brilliant brains. Remember that.
Gaga Grumps says if you haven't done it yet, grab your daily heart while I set up the next grid.
Grumps says at Freya Whiteheart you spammed and were asked not to. It's unhelpful and only slows things down.
Gaga Grumps says let's play Wordle.
Ocean Triangle says try flame, please.
Gaga Grumps says what letter will the wheel choose? Predictions in the chat now.
Welcome leftwards pushing hand, rightwards pushing hand to Wordle with Gaga.
Ocean Triangle says paint.
Gaga Grumps says we are starting with A. P again.
Ocean Triangle says try out paint.
Welcome the best Guna to Wordle with
Gaga
Gaga.
Grumps says leaderboard reset incoming. Tap those screens. The one wearing the crown at the end of the song chooses the first word.
Like a thong, race to the top, like a thon. Tap and don't stop, like a thon. Who will be crowned like a thon? Gremlin renowned like a thon.
Welcome LL Creative to Wordle with Gaga.
Gaga Grumps says want to steal the starting word. Send the ranking crown and snipe the list.
Grumps says audio is not happening as first word. Ever. Trust me.
Gaga Grumps says you have to win the first word ocean. Gaga Grumps says I've given you the beat, now let's see your fingers dance. Gaga Grumps says creative out of jail. Gaga Grumps says your word starting with P, please creative.
Google Creative 1 says place.
Gaga Grumps says you've taken creative's place in like jail LTJ lol. Gaga Grumps says place you got.
Tavrf says hello.
Grumps says at tab_VRFS higher.
PH7 says Verge.
Gaga Grumps says nearly. Green E moved into 5 Wordle Street.
Welcome Tav VRFS to Wordle with Gaga.
Gaga Grumps says Verge fits. Gaga Grumps says green R in number 3.
Welcome, they love me, start a Wordle with Gaga.
Gaga Grumps says what is sword? Gaga Grumps says gotta spin it lol.
PH7 says forte.
Gaga Grumps says it isn't a thing.
PH7 says horde.
PH7 says imagine if it's born again lol.
Grumps says for the horde.
Gaga Grumps says oh please don't tell me this is one of those games that didn't mark as complete and let me play it again. Gaga Grumps says it's happened twice before PH7.
Grumps says it Gaga and Grumps try it and see for fireworks.
PH7 says wow.
Good game.
Gaga Grumps says fireworks is cheating lol.
Good
Precious
game.
says great job.
Good game.
Gaga Grumps says GG Gremlins. Let's see those W's in the chat.
It's playtime! Gaga is in the box! Don't let her loose! Grumps is on the buttons!
Precious says we could have had that in one.
Are you ready to play? Let those stickers fly!
Gaga Grumps says do the do for Gaga. Share the live chat the chat and shower her with roses and GGs. Gaga Grumps says yet roll.
Grumps says nah, wrong starter letter.
Gaga Grumps says Wordle usually marks games as complete easy, let me play them again.
Game! Gremlins, let's go! Game! Gremlins, let's go!
Gaga Grumps says if you haven't done it yet, grab your daily heart while I set up the next one.
Let's go!
Gaga Grumps says okay skip the day lol. Gaga Grumps says let's play Wordle. Gaga Grumps says what letter will the wheel choose? Predictions in the chat now. Gaga Grumps says we are starting with A. J. Gaga Grumps says leaderboard reset incoming. Tap those screens. The one wearing the crown at the end of the song chooses the first word.
Race to the top like a thorn. Tap and don't stop like a thorn. Who will be crowned like a thorn?
It's
like a thorn. Race to the top like a thorn.
Gaga Grumps says sorry.
Like a thorn. Who will be crowned like a thorn? Gremlin renowned like a thorn. Fingers on fire like a thorn.
Welcome Chris Marvin to Wordle with Gaga.
Gaga Grumps says my wrist pushed a button. Gaga Grumps says want to steal the starting word. Send the ranking crown and snipe your list.
Welcome Jogi to Wordle with Gaga.
Gaga Grumps says I've given you the beat, now let's see your fingers dance. Gaga Grumps says your word starting with J, please PH7.
Benjamin is in the house.
Gaga Grumps says Chris in the house.
PH7 says I'd like Gento, please.
Welcome Darts Lover to Wordle with Gaga.
Gaga Grumps says Junto you got.
We would be honored if you would join us.
Welcome Luka Mihalik to Wordle with Gaga.
Gaga Grumps says wipeouts in the chat.
Welcome Big Mac to Wordle with Gaga.
Precious says abide. PH7 says Zimic.
Gaga Grumps says abide with me.
We would be honored if you would join us.
Welcome Oliver.cc to Wordle with Gaga.
Starting with A. PH7 says assay.
Welcome Riley Price to Wordle with Gaga.
Precious says allay.
Gaga Grumps says thanks for doing your daily heart, Big Mac. Gaga Grumps says thanks for doing your daily heart, creative.
Grump says at Riley Price 9980. Never. Welcome Doris Rabin to Wordle with Gaga.
Precious says amply.
Big Mick says apple.
Gaga Grumps says assay works.
Welcome to Wordle with Gaga.
Gaga Grumps says we have a second A in need of a home.
The creative one says I leveled up.
TH7 says alpha.
Grump says at SAM star no T.
Gaga Grumps says alarm is a shout.
Level up.
Gaga Grumps says level up for creative at end of game.
Grump says at ill creative 1.
Good game.
Gaga Grumps says GG Gremlins. Let's see those W's in the chat. Gaga Grumps says and now this for creative leveling up in the room.
It's a LLL level up. I guessed it wrong, you guessed it right. Now here we are, another height. If support was letters, you'd spell wow. This level's ours, come out with me now.
Level up.
Green, look at that glow. Didn't solve Wordle solo though. Support came in, guess it snap. Level unlocked, shout out chat. New fandom level, streak still alive. Wordle solved and you helped me fry. Tomorrow we guess, same time, same chat, same brilliant brains. Remember that.
Gaga Grumps says okay, back to our regular programming. Gaga Grumps says if you haven't done it yet, grab your daily heart while I set up the next grid. Gaga Grumps says let's play Wordle. Gaga Grumps says what letter will the wheel choose? Predictions in the chat now. Gaga Grumps says we
Welcome
started
CON to Wordle with
W.
Gaga.
Gaga Grumps says leaderboard reset incoming. Tap those screens. The one wearing the crown at the end of the song chooses the first word.
Like a thong, race to the top, like a thon. Tap and don't stop, like a thon. Who will be crowned like a thon? Gremlin renowned.
Gaga Grumps says want to steal the starting word. Send the ranking crown and snipe the list.
Gremlins don't tire like a thon.
Welcome Yamato to Wordle with Gaga.
Gaga Grumps says I've given you the beat, now let's see your fingers dance.
We would be honored if you would join us.
Gaga Grumps says your word starting with W, please Grumps.
Grumps says wiser.
Saren Not Saren
Welcome
says, "Hi,
Saren Not
Gaga,"
Saren to
and
Wordle with
Grumps.
Gaga.
Gaga Grumps says Saren in the house, thanks for doing your daily heart. Gaga Grumps says wiser you got.
The creative one says 165 out of 470. I'm back in like jail.
Gaga Grumps says yellow eye in need of a home.
Saren Not Saren says itchy.
Gaga Grumps says I do wonder who it decides is tapping too much. Gaga Grumps says itchy fits. Gaga Grumps says cause Ryan sits and wins all session without issue.
Welcome Molly to Wordle with Gaga.
Gaga Grumps says no change. 8 letters wiped from the game.
Welcome to Wordle with Gaga.
Precious says vapid. Gaga Grumps says blind works.
Welcome Dion to Wordle with Gaga.
Gaga Grumps says added a homeless L. Gaga Grumps says Wordle being stingy on this one. Potential double letters.
A creative one says anvil.
Gaga Grumps says what is Pavil? Gaga Grumps says no N for anvil.
Peanuts here!
Well, Creative One says I won't work.
Gaga Grumps says Quill is a good shout.
Grumps says pupil.
Gaga Grumps says what is a collie?
The Creative One says quail.
Precious says folio.
Gaga Grumps says finally honed that I.
Welcome Joey to Wordle with
Gaga
Gaga.
Grumps says danger zone. Joey says hello. Gaga Grumps says Joey in the house.
Grumps says it Joey higher.
Joey says how are you?
Gaga Grumps says what other options do we have?
Welcome less than to Wordle with Precious Gaga. Says that's all I see.
The best Gooner says try a filler.
Joey says go with that.
Gaga Grumps says yeah me too. Gaga Grumps says don't have anything to filter for.
Good game.
Precious says woohoo.
Gaga Grumps says GG Gremlins. Let's see those W's in the chat. Gaga Grumps says do you do the daily Wordle? I post mine on my page and would love you to share your results. Gaga Grumps says if you haven't done it yet, grab your daily heart while I set up the next grid.
Welcome Columbia to Wordle with Gaga.
Creative One says where is the treasure box?
Gaga Grumps says treasure box up if you need a coin for your daily heart. Gaga Grumps says just put one up creative. Let's see if you can find it. Gaga Grumps says let's play Wordle. Gaga Grumps says what letter will the wheel choose? Predictions in the chat now. Gaga Grumps says we are starting with A. M. Gaga Grumps says I have a mobile preview in studio and the treasure chest hides under the top of the ranking list.
Well, Creative One says still don't see it.
Gaga Grumps says leaderboard reset incoming. Tap those screens. The one
Welcome
wearing
Yang
the
to
crown
Wordle
at
with
the end
Gaga.
of the song chooses the first word.
PH7 says treasure box only shows in specific countries and a certain age limit.
Gaga Grumps says want to steal the starting word. Send the ranking crown and snipe the list. Gaga Grumps says aha thanks PH7. Gaga Grumps says I've given you the beat, now let's see your fingers dance. Gaga Grumps says is it the same with the goodie bag? PH7 says yes. Gaga Grumps says meh. Why can't I give everyone a penny for their daily heart lol?
Welcome Mari to Wordle with Gaga.
Precious says bloody taps ain't my friend today.
Gaga Grumps says your word starting with M please PH7.
Well, Creative One says anyone here in the US on mobile phone see it.
PH7 says Mogi.
Gaga Grumps says Mochi you got.
Precious says thanks for the coin Gaga heart hands.
Precious says Chucky.
Precious says NVM.
Precious says cheat.
The best gooner says chirp.
Welcome Carol Kelton to Wordle with Gaga.
Gaga Grumps says Yellow C and H in need of a home. Are we entering an H trap? The best gooner says MBM. Gaga Grumps says cheat checks for the trap.
Welcome
without
Delaney
entering
to
it.
Wordle with Gaga. Welcome Mexico Girl to Wordle with Gaga.
Gaga Grumps says no H trap.
Welcome
Precious
Katie
says
Whiteheart to Wordle with Gaga.
Gaga Grumps says shuck works.
Fireworks for Gaga.
Gaga Grumps says Wordle in 3. Let's see those fireworks in the chat.
Explode 'em on her face. She's in a happy place. Fireworks for Gaga.
Welcome George J to Wordle with Gaga.
Fireworks for Gaga. Emojis make her happy. As in her face they slappy. Fireworks for Gaga. Fireworks for Gaga.
Gaga Grumps says GG Gremlins. Let's see those W's in the chat.
Anything will be okay. If you can, that's okay. Smiley face still win the day. Fireworks for Gaga. Fireworks for Gaga. Fireworks for Gaga. Fireworks for Gaga.
Gaga Grumps says nice to see you Mari. Gaga Grumps says if you haven't done it yet, grab your daily heart while I set up the next grid. Gaga Grumps says let's play Wordle. Gaga Grumps says what letter will the wheel choose? Predictions in the chat now. Gaga Grumps says I am non-speaking. There is a pinned post on my page explaining. Gaga grumps says knew we won't let your Chris. Gaga grumps says we are starting with A. V. Gaga grumps says leaderboard reset incoming. Tap those screens. The one wearing the crown at the end of the song chooses the first word.
Race to the top like a thorn. Tap and don't stop like a thorn. Who will be crowned like a thorn? Gremlin renowned like a thorn. Fingers on fire like a thorn. Gremlins don't tire like a thorn. Hearts be flying like a thorn. Gremlins defying.
Gaga grumps says want to steal the starting word. Send the ranking crown and snipe the list. Gaga grumps says I've given you the beat, now let's see your fingers dance. Gaga grumps says you just wanted to fool them into letting you out of jail, didn't you, lol? Gaga grumps says your word starting with V, please, Chris.
Precious says, I just watched your pinned video, now I understand.
Gaga grumps says thanks, Oliver. I don't really know much different. As the greatest showman says. This is me, lol.
Welcome Steph to Wordle with Gaga.
If you would join us.
Gaga grumps says vouch you got.
Steph says hi.
Gaga grumps says a yellow U in need of a home.
Benjamin is in the house.
Grumps says it's Steph higher.
Gaga grumps says Steph in the house, thanks for doing your daily heart.
Steph says gully.
Gaga Grumps says Gully works. Gaga Grumps says you moved into number 2 Wordle Street.
Welcome Destiny Keller to Wordle with Gaga.
Gaga Grumps says can't be punny, no why.
Precious says tuber.
Gaga Grumps says burst fits.
Welcome Evan to Wordle with Gaga.
Gaga Grumps says yellow S in need of a home.
Precious says Sudan.
Gaga Grumps says Sudan is a country.
Welcome Kayla to Wordle with Gaga. Welcome Sunny to Wordle with Gaga.
Thanks for the follow.
Welcome Adam Fool to Wordle with Gaga.
Gaga Grumps says no plurals in Wordle.
Well, creative one says suede.
Steph says suave.
A creative one says suave. Precious says no V.
Well, creative one says
Welcome
no
Whiteheart
V.
to Wordle with Gaga.
Gaga Grumps says suede is a good shout.
Welcome, Gremlins, to the game grotto. Welcome, Gremlins, to the game grotto.
Welcoming
Gaga Grumps says GG Gremlins. Let's see those W's in the chat.
Share us round. Now tap that screen, tap it, tap it.
Precious says that really gets a country.
Gang Gremlins on the scene. Gang Gremlins on the scene.
Welcome D to Wordle with Gaga.
Gang Gremlins on the scene. Gang Gremlins on the scene. Now tap that screen.
Gaga Grumps says yes he did lol.
Precious says M muting himself.
Tap it, tap it, tap that screen, yeah, tap it, tap it. Let's see those team stickers flow.
Gaga Grumps says welcome Gremlins to the game grotto. Take a seat, grab your daily heart, claim your points and prepare to play.
Now tap that screen. Now tap that screen. Gang Gremlins on the scene.
Gaga Grumps says treasure box up if you need a coin for your daily heart. Gaga Grumps says if you haven't done it yet, grab your daily heart while I set up the next grid.
Precious says at Chris Marvin, same, I thought it was a solve-a well.
Gaga Grumps says now I have to try Sudan next time it fits lol. Gaga Grumps says let's play Wordle.
Welcome Angel. Paper cut to Wordle with Gaga. Grumps says that Adam Fool a workout in a show. It's all in a day's work.
Gaga Grumps says good Adam. It's when you wake up with the earworm you're really lost. Gaga Grumps says what letter will the wheel choose?
Steph
Predictions
says
in the
waiver.
chat now. Gaga Grumps says we are starting with A. B. Gaga Grumps says leaderboard reset incoming. Tap those screens. The one wearing the crown at the end of the song chooses the first word.
Race to the top like a thorn. Tap and don't stop like a thorn. Who will be crowned like a thorn? Gremlin renowned like a thorn. Fingers on fire like a thorn. Gremlins don't tire like
Gaga Grumps says want to steal the starting word. Send the ranking crown and snipe the list. Gaga Grumps says everyone was new once Kayla. You'll soon pick it up. Gaga Grumps says I've given you the beat, now let's see your fingers dance. Gaga Grumps says your word starting with B please Adam.
Precious says at Chris Marvin bye.
Grumps says it Chris Marvin laters.
Gaga Grumps says and as long as you're not spamming Kyle, suggestions are always welcome. Sometimes the winner gets stuck. Gaga Grumps says birth you got. Congrats.
Precious says Adam said birth.
Welcome
Steph
Maddie Lum
says
to Wordle
blank.
with Gaga.
Precious says tripe.
Gaga Grumps says and his first win was great. Gaga Grumps says tripe fits. LL Creative One says tribe.
Steph says Fritz.
Gaga Grumps says now let's get him fireworks.
Well, Creative One says Frisk.
Precious says wrist.
Welcome MORA to Wordle with Gaga.
LL Creative One says wrist.
Steph says wrist is good.
Gaga Grumps says wrist is in the grid. Gaga Grumps says no fireworks for Adam.
Well, Creative One says drift.
Welcome ADA to Wordle with Gaga.
Gaga Grumps says drift is a good shout.
Precious says drift is a great guess.
Precious says grift.
Gaga Grumps says oh, it's the influencer work ethic lol.
It's playtime!
Welcome Winking Face to Wordle with Gaga.
Gaga Grumps says GG Gremlins. Let's see those W's in the chat.
Don't let him push yours! Are you ready to play? Let those stickers fly! Which team
Good game.
Team Gaga, give it
Good game.
Team Grumps, are you here?
Good
Gaga
game.
Grumps says do for Gaga.
Good game.
Share the live chat the chat and shower her with roses and GGs.
Gremlins, let's go! Team Gaga, 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 Team Gaga, give it she, are you ready? Team
Gaga Grumps says thanks for the GGs patches.
Gremlins, let's go! Game! Gremlins, let's go!
Welcome Charlotte Hart Hands to Wordle with Gaga.
Good game. Good game. Good game. Good game.
Gaga Grumps says thanks for doing your daily heart, Adam, and for the roses.
Precious says welcome to the team, Adam.
Gaga Grumps says if you haven't done it yet, grab your daily heart while I set up the next grid. Gaga Grumps says let's play Wordle.
Good game. Good game. Good game.
Gaga Grumps says what letter will the wheel choose? Predictions in the chat now.
Good game. Good game. Good game. Good game.
Precious says I'm in jail again. I need to play Monopoly and get a get out of jail free card.
Steph says Queen.
Gaga Grumps says he didn't predict it. Gaga Grumps says we are starting with A. Q.
Adamful says Kwasi.
Gaga Grumps says leaderboard reset incoming. Tap those screens. The one wearing the crown at the end of the song chooses the first word.
Race to the top like a thon. Tap and don't stop like a thon. Who will be crowned like a thon? Gremlin renowned like a thon. Fingers on fire like a thon. Gremlins don't tire.
Gaga Grumps says want to steal the starting word. Send the ranking crown and snipe the list. Gaga Grumps says I've given you the beat, now let's see your fingers dance. Gaga Grumps says, but of course he had to have the last word. Your word starting with Q, please, Grumps.
Adamful says Grumps got me.
Grumps says quota. Welcome Dylan to Wordle with Gaga.
Gaga Grumps says hi Tracy.
Grumps says at Tracy wa mummy heya.
Gaga grumps says quota you got.
Steph says chomp.
Gaga grumps says Agrino lives at number 3 Wordle Street. Gaga grumps says chomp fits.
A damful says block.
A creative one says flown.
Gaga grumps says no change. 8 letters wiped from the grid.
A damful says Drownex.
A creative one says flown.
Welcome oaf hand with index finger and thumb crossed to Wordle
Gaga
with Gaga.
grumps says Wordle making us work it today. Gaga grumps says drown works.
Precious says drone.
Steph says drone.
Gaga grumps says thought we had it then.
Well, creative
Welcome
one
guess
says
who to
drone.
Wordle with Gaga.
A damful says so close.
Welcome Eliza to Wordle with Gaga.
Gaga grumps says drone for 4.
Welcome to Wordle with Gaga.
If you would join us.
Gaga grumps says GG Gremlins. Let's see those W's in the chat.
A damful says W.
Welcome Joe Haycock to Wordle with Gaga.
Gaga grumps says Jack in the house thanks for doing your daily heart. Gaga grumps says thanks for the super GG Precious.
Welcome, Jack Wright to Wordle with Gaga.
Jack Wright says Gaga and
A pretty sky.
Gaga grumps says if you haven't done it yet, grab your daily heart while I set up the next grid.
Welcome Kian to Wordle with Gaga.
Gaga grumps says let's play Wordle. Gaga grumps says what letter will the wheel choose? Predictions in the chat now.
Thanks for the follow.
Gaga grumps says what letter will the wheel choose? Predictions in the chat now K.
Welcome Jonah to Wordle with Gaga.
Gaga Grumps says wrong button LKOL. Gaga Grumps says we are starting with A. K. Gaga Grumps says leaderboard reset incoming. Tap those screens. The one wearing the crown at the end of the song chooses the first word.
Welcome Colin Body to Wordle with Gaga. Grumps says it Jonah Hale.
Precious says 60k likes.
Gaga Grumps says want to steal the starting word. Send the ranking crown and snipe the list. Gaga Grumps says I've given you the beat, now let's see your fingers dance.
Grumps says at Theo stop spamming.
Benjamin is in the house.
Gaga Grumps says Colin. Gaga Grumps says your word starting with K, please Kian.
Adamful says Kian had it.
Steph says sent over 600 likes, and I got 180. I've been robbed.
Gaga Grumps says hey there Jonah.
Precious says Kian said Niffy.
Gaga Grumps says the leaderboard is a fickle foe. Everyone gets throttled at some point. Gaga Grumps says knife you got.
Creative one says wipe.
Adam Fool says scalp.
Grumps says a knife crime.
The creative one says plant.
Precious says it Grumps, I hope not.
Gaga Grumps says now let's BRNG those fireworks home. Gaga Grumps says scalp fits.
Precious says spout.
Gaga Grumps says we start with S and have a homeless P.
Grump says spoon, I dare you.
Gaga Grumps says thanks Jonah lol.
A downfall says sport.
Grump says no and shut up, old man.
Gaga Grumps says will we spout fireworks?
Precious says damn.
Look Creative 1 says sport.
Steph says sport.
Gaga Grumps says who said sport?
A damnful says it Gaga and Grumps.
Welcome Senator Wordle with Gaga.
Gaga Grumps says lost Adam his fireworks.
Precious says, and if I would have said sport, it would have been spout.
Grump says at Adam and Fuel.
Gaga Grumps says I'm counting that as showing the power of the wipeout.
Welcome, Gremlin, to
A damnful says, but I said scalp, so I don't mind someone else's answer being picked.
Good game.
Guys, settle
Good game.
down. Grab your heartbeat.
Good game.
Share us round. Now tap
Good
that screen.
game.
Tap it, tap it, tap that screen.
Gaga Grumps
Good
says
game.
GG Gremlins. Let's see those W's in the chat.
Gang Gremlins on the
Good
scene.
Good game.
Gang Gremlins on the
Good
scene.
game. Good
Gang
game.
Gremlins on the scene.
Good game.
Gang
Good
Gremlins
game.
on the scene.
Good game. Good game.
Now tap that screen.
Good game.
Tap it, tap that screen. Yeah, tap it, tap it.
Largely says hey.
Now tap that screen. Tap it, tap it, tap that screen. Yeah, tap it, tap it. Let's see those team stickers flow.
Good game.
Grump says at Nilla Gaming higher.
Good game.
Gang Gremlins on
Good
the
game.
scene.
Good game.
Now tap that screen.
Good game.
Gaga Grumps says Miller in the house thanks for doing your daily hard.
Good game.
Now tap that screen.
Welcome Miller Gaming to Wordle with Gaga.
Good game.
Gaga Grumps says if you haven't done it yet, grab the daily heart while I set up the next grid.
Gang Gremlins on the scene.
Millargaming says, how is everyone?
Gaga Grumps says tickety boo. You. Gaga Grumps says let's play Wordle. Gaga Grumps says thanks for all the GGs. Gaga Grumps says what letter will the wheel choose? Predictions in the chat now.
Millargaming says I am good, thank you. I have a big hospital appointment tomorrow where I get my diagnosis. I'm nervous.
Gaga Grumps says we are starting with A. J.
Precious says at Malargaming praying it all goes well, do you?
Gaga Grumps says nothing too serious, I hope.
Milargaming says at precious_thank you smiley face. Precious says for you.
Gaga Grumps says leaderboard reset incoming. Tap those screens. The one wearing the crown at the end of the song chooses the first word.
Milargaming says at Gaga and Grumps they've been testing for lymphoma.
Like a thumb, race to the top, like a thon. Tap and don't stop, like a thon. Who will be crowned like a thon? Gremlin renowned like a thon. Fingers on fire like a thon. Gremlins don't tire like a thon. Hearts beat flying like a thon. Gremlins defying.
Gaga Grumps says oh Grumps' best friend had that about 25 years ago. It's tough but he made T3. Gaga Grumps says want to steal the starting word. Send the ranking crown and snipe the list.
Everybody get down! It's a freaking sniper!
A damn fool says W Grumps.
Welcome G to Wordle with Gaga.
Malargaming says that Gaga and Grumps indefinitely staying positive.
Precious says we're who. Gaga Grumps says yes Precious.
Welcome Jacob to Wordle with Gaga.
Precious says just please.
Gaga Grumps says Precious stole the crown right off Grumps' head. Gaga Grumps says your word starting with J please Precious. Gaga Grumps says joust you got.
Welcome Armani to Wordle with Gaga.
Adamful says power.
Milargaming says world.
Gaga Grumps says Agrino lives at number 2 Wordle Street. Gaga Grumps says let's test that trap early.
Level up.
Gaga Grumps says level up coming after the game.
Precious says polar.
Milargaming says polar.
Gaga Grumps says polar for fireworks.
Fireworks for Gaga. It's a performance tonight. Explode 'em on her face. She's in a happy place. Fireworks for Gaga.
Gaga Grumps says Wordle in 3. Let's see those fireworks in the chat.
Fireworks for Gaga.
Welcome Jonas Scott to Wordle with Gaga.
Adaptable says well done.
Precious says we love an all green bull.
From a single rose to a whole bouquet. Anything will be okay. If you can, that's okay. Smileys in chat still win the day. Fireworks for Gaga. Fireworks for Gaga.
Gaga Grumps says GG Gremlins. Let's see those W's in the chat.
Fireworks for Gaga.
Gaga Grumps says excellent game. Well-timed snipe. Fireworks and an all-green grid.
It's a
Level up.
You guessed it right. Now here we are.
Gaga Grumps says and now to top it with this for Precious.
You'd spell wow. This level's ours. Come bow with me now. Green, green, look at that glow. Didn't solve Wordle solo though. Support came in. Guess this snap. Level unlocked. Shout out chat. New fandom level streak still alive. Wordle solved and you helped me fry. Tomorrow we guess same time, same chat, same brilliant brains. Remember that.
Gaga Grumps says okay, normal service has resumed.
Welcome Lara to Wordle with Gaga. Grumps says at Lara higher.
Gaga Grumps says if you haven't done it yet, grab your daily heart while I set up the next grid.
Grumps says normal. Grumps says at Laurie Hart hands hair.
Gaga Grumps says oh what a time for Wordle to log me out. 2 secs. Gaga Grumps says okay, now normal service is resumed. Gaga Grumps says let's play Wordle. Gaga Grumps says, what letter will the wheel choose? Predictions in the chat now. Gaga Grumps says we are starting with A. H. Gaga Grumps says leaderboard reset incoming. Tap those screens. The one wearing the crown at the end of the song chooses the first word.
Race to the top like a thorn. Tap and don't stop like a thorn. Who will be crowned like a thorn? Gremlin renowned like a thorn.
Gaga Grumps says want to steal the starting word. Send the ranking crown and snipe the list. Gaga Grumps says 9 like goals smashed walls and tapping.
Welcome
Gaga
Jacob to
Grumps
Wordle
says,
with
I can
Gaga.
hear the beat now, let's see your fingers dance.
Adamful says Harry, please.
Gaga Grumps says, oh, that's a tricky one. Adam jumped it just as my finger came down. Think I have to give it 2. Gaga Grumps says your word starting with H, please, Adam. Gaga Grumps says yellow H and are in need of homes. Precious says clash.
Thanks for the follow.
Exan Bacon says name.
Adamful says chant.
A creative one says laugh.
Gaga Grumps says eggs.
Welcome Eggs and Bacon to Wordle with Gaga.
Malargaming says shame.
Eggs and Bacon says theme.
LL Creative One says stash. Gaga Grumps says chant fits.
Precious says smash wash.
Gaga Grumps says I moved into number 3H still homeless.
Amelia says stash.
A damful says flash.
Gaga Grumps says Smashworks.
Welcome
Creative One says
AMELIA to
Flash.
Wordle with Gaga.
Precious says leash.
Malargaming says leash.
Gaga
Welcome Yangdon
Grumps
to
says
Wordle with
Leash Still
Gaga.
Whirls.
Well, Creative One says flash.
Amelia says trash.
A damful says could be a wash.
Malargaming says at Amelia no R.
Precious says awash.
Gaga Grumps says Danger Zone. All options in chat.
Well, Creative One says trash.
Malargaming says that Precious underscore wash is a shout.
Precious says quash a wash is all I see.
LL Creative One says a wash. Grump says at Lara Laters.
Gaga Grumps says Quash and a wash is all I see. Ooh.
Well, Creative One says at Lori, I know it's always after I put it in.
Miller Gaming says 2 places 2 options. Gaga Grumps says no filter needed.
Precious says Aquas fillers.
Gaga Grumps says squash is 6.
Malargaming says squash is 6 letters.
Precious says quash then.
Welcome Callum Glassy to Wordle with
Gaga
Gaga.
Grumps says every damn time with the 50-50.
It's playtime! Gaga is in the box!
Good game. Malargaming says quash.
Don't let her lose! Grumps is
A
on
damful
the
says
buttons.
quash it is.
Don't let him push yours! Are you ready to play? Let those
Malargaming
stickers
says
fly!
boo.
Which team are you
Good
on?
game.
Give a cheer.
Good game.
Gaga Grumps says GG Gremlins.
Good game.
Let's see those W's in the chat.
Good game.
Gremlins, let's go!
Good game.
Gremlins, let's go!
Good game.
Gaga Grumps says time for one last game.
Good game.
Give a cheer. Team Grumps, are you ready?
Good game. Creative One says Jack. Good game.
Are you steady? Gremlins, let's go!
Good game.
Gremlins, let's go!
Good game.
Game! Gremlins,
Gaga Grumps says if you haven't done it yet, grab your daily heart while I set up the next word.
game! Gremlins, let's go! Game! Gremlins, let's go!
A damful says one. Oh, okay, likes incoming.
Gaga Grumps says it's more like about 5 or 6 an hour.
Precious says at Gaga and Grumps.
Gaga Grumps says let's play Wordle. Gaga Grumps says what letter will the wheel choose? Predictions in the chat now.
Grumps says at Rustum no.
Adam Fool says there it is. W chat. Gaga Grumps says we are starting with A. U.
Precious says never getting this Z.
Gaga Grumps says leaderboard reset incoming. Tap those screens. The one wearing the crown at the end of the song chooses the first word.
Race to the top like a thon. Tap and don't stop like a thon. Who will be crowned like a thon? Gremlin renowned like a thon.
Gaga Grumps says want to steal the starting word. Send the ranking crown and snipe the list. Gaga Grumps says I've given you the beat, now let's see your fingers dance.
Welcome KB to Wordle with Gaga.
LL Creative One says I give up. Like jail has got me.
Gaga Grumps says your word starting with U please Miller.
Precious says at LL Creative One sane.
Milar Gumming says unite please.
Gaga Grumps says unite you got.
Milargaming says slick.
Gaga Grumps says a green eye lives at number 3 Wordle Street. Gaga Grumps says slick fits.
Milargaming says at Maddie Lum Noe.
A Creative One says tripe.
Gaga Grumps says no change 8 letters wiped from the game.
Milargaming says no.
Trina says privy.
Gaga Grumps says Noah 4 tripe. Gaga Grumps says Privy Whirls. Gaga Grumps says wow, one of those it is.
Milargaming says tough one.
Precious says axiom.
Gaga Grumps says what a wordly word that is.
Milargaming says shot.
Milargaming says very good shout, I mean.
Gaga Grumps says close.
A creative one says idiom.
Grump says idiom.
Miller Gaming says idiom. Gaga Grumps says yep, has to be.
Good game.
Milargaming says yay.
Welcome Light Blue Heart Shivani to Wordle with Gaga.
A Damful says, what did you call me? Lol J Can.
Good game.
We would be honored if you would join us.
Gaga Grumps says GG Gremlins. Let's see those W's in the chat.
Well, Creative One says finally guessed one on the last board.
Welcome Miss Ava to Wordle with Gaga.
Gaga Grumps says thanks for doing your daily heart, Shivani. Gaga Grumps says thanks for joining me to play Wordle. I will be back at 4 PM UK tomorrow for more Wordle with Gaga.
Adam Paul says W. Chris says don't forget our hand for radio.
Milargaming says, have a great evening.
Trina says by all.
Good game.
A Damful says it's been fun. Have a great day.
Gaga Grumps says we do the daily Wordle. I post mine on my page and